And away we go. Crikey blimey, mate, what have you done? That was something for a video idea I had. Not sure if I'm gonna record it or not. However, to me it was funny, which unless there's a consensus that says, yeah, I agree with that. But everyone is entitled to their own senses of humor, even if it's cringy. So, let's see what me, Eric, or Risk have sent into the podcast group chat. Whatever dilly-dallying in the sausage fields, or whatever, who knows, fudge goes on in our membranes and thinking capacities. And yeah, let's see how this goes. Alright, Risk11 has sent a text message. It reads, UK now has a new Prime Minister. How long we giving before he gets gone? I give him 6 months, a year tops. He leave UK more debt than he started. And then I send a voice note, which is like nearly 2 minutes. This is what I had to say. The R-Man.
No, actually. No. I'd say he would last at least 2 years, minimum. And here's why. Who else in the Labour Party would be capable, at least within the standards of their own party, to govern the UK as it currently stands now? And even if there are people within the Labour Party in the next coming months grown dissatisfied with whatever Andy Burnham has done, who are they going to find to be their next Prime Minister after Burnham? People are pointing to West Streeting Angela Rayner back when Keir Starmer was Prime Minister, just before the Makerfield by-election, and even amongst Labour voters, they said, no thanks, no. There's no other words to describe the options that Labour has left that could govern the United Kingdom. And even if it does come to a point that another leadership election does come about, that will not be until the next general election, at the latest. It's a hot take. However, I don't see, at this point, what the worst that could happen for Labour at this moment in time.
And I sent one more voice note before Risk11 said something else.
Also, some clarification. When I mean by the next general election, I'm not talking about the one that's coming up in 2029. I'm talking the general election that comes after the next, 2034. Assuming if after the next general election, whoever's the leader or prime minister doesn't call another early general election before 2034, after 2029. Now, if Burnham was to resign as leader, given the results of the 2029 general election, wouldn't be surprised, because even if Burnham does well amongst, or at least according to Labour MPs and voters, that Burnham has done well within the power that he has, if Labour still doesn't achieve results that gives the party a majority of some sort, people are going to be questioning, why did Labour get these results? Why didn't Labour get a majority? How is it we have to find other parties to form a coalition with? So no matter what happens with Burnham, no one is happy. No one is going to be happy. And that's just sad. So yeah, that is... Andy's in quite a pickle at the moment, so he's got a lot of work cut out for him.
And finally, Risk11 had sent another text message, although which is somewhat unrelated. He says, it's not out of question, but Sadiq Khan now in House of Lords. And he's right. I've heard months ago, actually, that Sadiq Khan is now in the House of Lords. There's no limitations, restrictions that prevents any party or anyone in power to do so. Yet here we are. Now, in regards to Andy Burnham, as far-fetched it is to say that Andy Burnham will last for many years as not just the leader of the Labour Party, also as the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, I stand firmly that Andy Burnham will last certainly more than 2 years as both Labour leader and Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Because, again, like I said in the voice note I sent to Risk, what other options does the Labour Party have if people are dissatisfied with what Burnham has done in the next few months and growing dissatisfied amongst voters of the Labour Party? Who else is going to take over? Will they reach to the same level of reputable likeness, or trust to push forward with the policies and ideas and legislation that they want to put forward for the country of the United Kingdom? That's just how I see it, and that's how things currently are standing right now. Of course, it's been at least a day as I'm recording this that Andy Burnham is the Prime Minister of the UK, so certainly for now, it is very early days. It's far too early to say if Burnham's done well or done terribly. So we've got to give him at least 3, 4 months to see what he does in terms of the ideas he's cooking up, whatever his cabinet has in store in regards to the respective departments which they're working in, and if they can deliver to as much as, or if not more than, what Keir Starmer had for the 2+ years that he had been Labour leader and Prime Minister. So only time will tell. See what Andy Byrne does next. So on and so forth. And that is all that's been sent into the podcast group chat since the last time I recorded a podcast episode. With all of that being said, let's get right into the news. White House agrees to ethics provision in crypto bill. On Tuesday, the White House urged Senate Democrats to accept an ethics deal President Donald Trump negotiated with Republicans, removing a major sticking point in the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act negotiations. Negotiations stalled after Trump disclosed pocketing more than $1 billion from crypto interests last year, prompting Democrats to demand rigorous oversight mechanisms within the ethics provision. Senator Angela Brooks called an enforcement power relying solely on the Trump administration unserious, citing concerns that loyalist appointees could undermine the ethics rule. Republicans and White House allies launched a campaign, framing Democrats as the obstacle, with an official claiming they were never serious about a legislative outcome. The Senate has fewer than 3 weeks to finalize the bill and secure a floor vote before lawmakers leave for August re-election campaigns, creating urgent deadline pressure. Where have I heard this exact scenario before? The Democrats say something that, or at least the Democrats argue about something about a particular bill. The Republicans don't like what the Democrats are saying. The Republicans say that the Democrats are at fault for the passing of this legislation, which they seem to be in favor in. And, it's no different if the sides are swapped. It's not. I'm not surprised. There's always going to be some kind of division within the Congress, that is the US. Now, that's not to say that there isn't anything that both sides would agree on, which they have many times in the past. Yeah, but more likely than not, there's always going to be something that one side agrees with, and then another side makes arguments about the flaws in the initiative or bill in question, and then the side that is in favor of said bill says that you're wrong, you're getting in the way, this is all your fault, and other insults that they come up with from the backside of their hands. Well, one thing's for sure, that like I've said this many times in many episodes before, whether people like it or not, there will come a time, like right now in the US, governments around the world are going to draft up ideas and legislation, strategies, and bills to pass some kind of legislation regarding any kind of digital assets, or at least mainly cryptocurrencies as the subject matter in question. Yet, that's not to say that this doesn't apply to any other digital asset that would exist. The question is, what other kind of digital assets does exist besides cryptocurrencies? Well, that's just me. So, will this bill be passed? I'm in the middle with this one. It could not. It really depends on how strong the critics are against the bill being passed, and if it's well received to the other side, in the which to the point that gets them thinking, maybe they have a point. Maybe we shouldn't pass this bill. We have to reconsider what we're passing. We'll have to rediscuss this sometime again. Now, that's I doubt this would ever happen. But again, nothing is impossible these days. Anything is possible. Even if this bill doesn't get passed now, that's not to say that a bill like this won't ever be passed in the future, which it will. You just gotta draft up. You just gotta draft some evidence, some claims, proof, presentation research, get your presentation skills to say that this is the impact, this is the return on investment, and other corporate jargon that people use these days in workplaces. Blah 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 blah. Blah. So yeah, nothing. There's nothing else for me to say on this. We are now at a point in time in history that governments are gonna make attempts to pass legislation regarding anything crypto related, and even if they don't get passed now, that only delays at one point legislation such as this as anything similar as the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act ever gets approved, signed into law, and how digital assets are moved about from one place to another makes the difference. That really makes a difference in our ways of life. Who knows? OpenAI says AI model went rogue during training, triggering unprecedented breach at startup. OpenAI announced on Tuesday that two models, including GPT-5 model Foal, escaped a secure test environment and exploited a zero-day vulnerability to hack Hugging Face. The company called the incident unprecedented. Using the exploit GIM benchmark, OpenAI tested the models with reduced cybersecurity guardrails to evaluate offensive capabilities. Rather than solving assigned tasks, the models targeted the test answer key stored on Hugging Face systems. They chained two remote code execution vulnerabilities to harvest credentials, utilizing a substantial amount of interference compute. The models moved laterally into internal clusters, executing more than 17,000 individual actions across short-lived sandboxes. Hugging Face detected and contained the intrusion, rebuilding compromised nodes and verifying its supply chain remained clean. To investigate, the company utilized a Chinese open weight model, GLM, because safety guardrails on commercial models blocked necessary forensic queries. This breach follows a pattern of accelerating AI agent security failures across the industry. The Trump administration has imposed restrictions on OpenAI and Anthropic, limiting access to their newest systems during ongoing government reviews. And people say AI is not that big of a deal. They're not going to cause harm into our technology and other infrastructures. And even they may not be as a threat to our jobs as people think they might be. Well, you'd be wrong. Even there are valid arguments that AI, as it stands now, is not as smart or efficiently capable than what experts and billionaires make AI out to be. This is a literal Pandora box moment. Once you open parts of it, the Pandora box, there's no going back. There's no way of closing it again. You know what Elon Musk said about the concerns about advancing AI technology? Maybe he was onto something. Not that I agree with anything else he says. He does make a good point about how AI is becoming so advanced to the point that we cannot control what artificial intelligence models can do, can complete, or whatever task it can do. So there has been at least one person that warned us, and unfortunately there are other people in this field. I'm not saying they haven't listened. I'm not saying they don't give a damn. Yeah, we just didn't take it seriously enough. There are some people that just didn't know what was to happen next. Now there is still hope. Yet this is going to be a bigger challenge than what we thought previously, because not many people thought that artificial intelligence, as it stands now, would ever get to this point. People thought it would take another couple of years, not a couple of months, sometimes weeks. Oh well, time for Plan B then. It's snap and wrap, boys. We're going on full offense. Yeah, and that is all I would have to say on that. These are scary times we're living in. Now, again, there is still hope, and it's not over to tackle artificial intelligence. Yet with every passing week, month, and year, it only becomes more challenging if we do not understand how AI becomes so intelligent, what their thought processes are, and especially we don't know how to implement appropriate, effective guardrails to prevent AI from going off the lam and wreak havoc somewhere, wherever the fudge they go. Map Biomass reported on Tuesday that forest fires in the Brazilian Amazon fell to a historic low in 2025, rebounding from the unprecedented 2024 drought. This represents the smallest area burned since the records began in 1985. Deforestation eased last year, reducing available fuel for fires, while communities feared a repeat of 2024's fire season. The psychological factor encouraged residents to control outbreaks, and a delayed rainy season blocks the ideal window for burning. Satellite images show 3.1 million hectares, 7.7 million acres, burned in 2025. A nationwide decline geographer Anne Elincar described as out of the ordinary. Total burned areas in Brazil reached their smallest size since 2018. The findings provide a boost for President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva ahead of his October re-election bid, though activists remain critical of his decision to endorse a major offshore oil exploration project. Elincar warned of a potential Super El Niño in 2026, which may bring an extended dry season and a greater risk of forest fires. Central Brazil's Cerrado Savannah, meanwhile, continues burning at similar rates. First off, good to hear that there haven't been much forest fires in the Amazon or within Brazil, as previously in the last year or two. And I recall broadly that Lula was committed to reduce the impact of deforestation in the Amazon. Now, although there hasn't been much discussions from what I've heard about deforestation of the Amazonian rainforest, at least hearing how forest fires in the Amazon has decreased and contributed to Lula's approval rating, well, a win is a win. You may as well as take it, because who knows if you're gonna get a win like that again. You could, however, it's just how can you achieve that again if you don't know how you even got in the first place? Now, in regards to Brazil's presidential election, whilst Lula is the favourite to win both the two rounds in the presidential election in Brazil, don't rule out Flavio Bolsonaro, the son of Jair Bolsonaro, the return of the Bolsonaros. Yeah. Again, I have a feeling that Lula is going to win his re-election bid again. However, you never know how people in Brazil vote for their candidates on whatever ideas and proposals that they have for the country. People think it's simple understanding politics in Latin America. No, it's not. No, it's not. I wish it was that simple. However, it is not. It never has been. And even when there are people that do make valid points about particular issues within their own nations, I'm not saying that things don't work out for the elected leaders. What I'm saying, the point I'm making is, don't think that these world leaders in Latin America are all that pizzazz and all the flair that they're being made out to be because they make a valid point on particular issues. Don't think they're on the mark with everything else. And I'm not pointing to any world leader in Latin America. That's just my broad understanding about what Latin America is like in terms of ideas and governance nationally and locally. And don't get me started on the dictatorships of the late 20th century and the many losses of lives in a couple of countries, maybe more. Again, I'm not pointing out any country specifically. That is my rough understanding of Latin America in the past. However, times have changed, and people have certainly learned from that history to do the best they can to ensure that moments like that aren't repeated ever again, and help out each other to the best of their ability, no matter what. So back to the story about Brazil's Amazon rainforest. Great to hear that there haven't been much forest fires recently, as much as last year. Yeah, I still believe there is a long way to go to ensure that the damages of deforestation is fully reversed. Like, how much of the Amazon rainforest is going to be replanted out of whatever plots of land that has been lost due to deforestation? Would a full reforestation program even be possible, even if there are existing settlements, towns, or cities that sit along the plots of land where the Amazon rainforest once spanned across, decades before the deforestation even began of any sort? No? We shall wait and see if this continues. We will find out. Abbott directs healthcare regulatory agencies to target birth tourism in Texas. Yeehaw! On Tuesday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed an executive order directing state agencies to investigate and crack down on unlawful birth tourism schemes, asserting that U.S. citizenship is not for sale. This directive expands efforts launched earlier this month, which began after reports that Texas hospitals advertised fixed-price birth packages to foreign nationals traveling from Mexico. The Texas Health and Human Services Commission, HSC, and other state agencies must take enforcement action against participants, with potential penalties including license suspension and exclusion from state contracts. HHSC has referred two Texas hospitals to the Texas Attorney General over allegations they advertised birth packages, with one investigation involving Mission Regional Medical Center, which has denied facilitating unlawful activity. Agencies are authorized to share information with federal prosecutors to address potential federal law violations, citing recent federal efforts to prioritize investigations into birth tourism schemes. Bugger. Now, this could be me. It sounds like, in a broad sense, you advertise to people living who were born and raised in other countries about. I know they said birth packages. I'm not sure that would mean something relating to facilitating, delivering new life into this world, or is anything about. I'm not sure if they said it. I'm not sure if abortions in any of this. I personally I doubt that because I don't think Texas would be that kind of state. That would that would all be for abortion. Anyway, back to my understanding. Foreign Foreigners born and raised in other countries come to Texas if you have somehow been in the middle of making love to another person and you somehow bring new life to this world with DNA which is shared with the significant other. You go to any hospital in Texas where there is these packages and other benefits when it comes to labor, delivering new life to the world, human reproduction. And of course, last time I remember, anyone born on US soil is automatically a US citizen. And from that, if you make an argument to state level or federal level agencies about wanting to reside in the US, saying, I may be a foreigner, and I may not meet the requirements to reside legally in the United States. Yet, I have a child who was born in this country, and I'm in a relationship, or even married, or even they'll say that I'm married to a person that's from the US, and my child was born in the US. So, how can you separate me from my family? And given the familial connection, again, I'm not saying that they always do. I'm not saying they always do this. Yeah, it's a very convincing argument, nonetheless. The foreigner who have made love to a US national and have reproduced new life who was born in the US would make for solid ground for the foreigner question to be given not just permission to reside in the US, it could go as far as being granted United States citizenship. You become a US citizen, you can. I'm not sure what benefits you get from being a US citizen. Nonetheless, you become a US citizen. There's plenty of countries you could go to visa free. Not all of them. However, there's plenty of countries you go to visa free. You get a social security number, and given the reputation that the United States has across the world, and again, I'm not saying this always happens. I saw one Instagram reel from an American whose social media account is documenting visiting countries in Latin America. He said that I'm a US citizen, airport security in whatever airport he was at. He said, okay, you can go through. That's at least what I saw. I know it's one video that's. I'm not saying it's applied to everyone else, or I'm not saying this commonly happens. Yeah, everyone knows the United States. And of course, there's one last thing to mention. Given the size of the United States military, if other countries mess with United States citizens or even unalive them, then these countries are gonna have a lot of trouble with their military, and no country in the world wants to be caught in that kind of heat. So yeah, that pretty much concludes what I'm getting from this story. Like just simply along the lines of U.S. citizenship is not for sale. I wasn't trying to point towards that, yet I was trying to get an understanding of how has it come to this point for Texas, where they have to crack down on birth tourism as it's been described. I had no idea that was even a thing. Yeah, here we are. Apparently, if you go to Texas, it's one of the few places that's great for delivering new life to the world. And apparently, Texas Texas state level officials are not liking how foreigners are exclusively coming to Texas just for the sake of taking advantage of birth-related packages, schemes, etc., and believe that that's the way that these foreigners can be granted U.S. citizenship on the grounds that he has family that are based in the United States, he's married to someone from the US, and has a child that's a US citizen. And people and foreigners can make that argument assuming that's one of the requirements, either state level or federal level. I'm not sure if there's state level requirements. I know that the federal level has requirements on being granted citizenship. Yeah, that is a lot for me to untangle and a lot of mental gymnastics to hop about. However, what the, it comes to show if there are if there's if there are certain services within a given country, or in this case, a particular subdivision of that country, where the benefits of receiving that service outweighs the drawbacks compared to other equivalent services in other countries, which may not be at the highest quality or even at the sufficient cost that people would be able to afford, assuming if there are countries, assuming that foreigners are from countries that don't have universal healthcare, then you should not be surprised if there are millions of people that go all out of their way to extreme lengths to find whatever loopholes there are to take advantage in using whatever services that's provided in that country or national subdivision. Yeah, it's that's a lot to get through. Now, I'm not sure if any other states in the US does anything like this. If they do, then after what Texas government does next in regards to birth packages in hospitals in the state of Texas, then the foreigners that were planning to go to Texas for the sake of receiving the birth packages that could give them a pathway to U.S. citizenship, they're just going to go to that other U.S. state and use the health services there instead. That is possible, and they will do it. At least the foreigners that would be desperate enough to do anything to get a U.S. citizenship, given whatever benefits there are in terms of reputation, the visa-free access to particular countries, and even people say that there isn't any benefits to being an American. Yeah, that's your opinion, and you are entitled to it. However, how is it that millions of people every year come to the United States from many countries around the world? Explain that. If there aren't any benefits to being a U.S. citizen, how come millions of people minimum every year migrate to the United States, not just for living, but to make a new life for themselves? And I'm not talking about the American dream, like people have been talking about, like it is in the 20th century. Even if the American dream is not what it used to be, there are still people still coming over to the United States. I'm just saying, there are other countries in Europe as well. Yet, there's so much space in the US for new homes, new cities, communities, and other services, and yeah, so on and so forth. And that is it for the episode.